Hey guys, welcome to the third video of this Breaktest-Board series. One thing I have to tell you before somebody else says, okay, why don't you talk about this fact? Of course, we know there are different woods, and different woods have different densities, which means even if they are cut with the same parameters, for example, 30 centimeters on each side and a thickness of 1 centimeter, obviously not every wood is as strong as oak wood, for example. Oak is sort of considered the strongest wood in the world, and it's obviously way harder to crush an oak board than to crush this one here. This one here is, in German it's called Fichtenholz. I think it's called sculpture or something like that. Anyways, I will come to that in a while. And but how can you really tell which wood has the higher density? Well, obviously, if they all have the same size, means also the same thickness, and you put them on a scale, and you see one is obviously heavier than the other, then that means that the heavier board is made of the more dense wood. If they are all constructed the same way, so to speak, because that's also something you have to keep in mind. They must be constructed all in the same way, and they have to have the same size. But if you then have a scale, you can simply put them on a scale and see which wood has the higher density and which wood is therefore harder to break. So you see, there are progressions you can do. So not only just maybe attaching 2 or 3 of the same wood with another and then trying to crush them, which is obviously a good thing if you have several boards of the same kind. But you can expand from there. You can say, for example, okay, I tried this blue wood here right now, and one day I want to go up to oak and try to if I can see if I can break an oak board, for example. So there are progressions. The same with calisthenics. It's also here with break testing. There are, of course, progressions. And if you're really crazy, you go over from those woods over to, let's say, ice, because ice has a pretty high density and has a hard surface as well. Or, of course, you could someday, if you're really crazy, move over to concrete. But that's something I wouldn't recommend, because once you move up to those extreme materials that have this high density, the risk for injury increases dramatically. And as I said, we all want to have healthy hands. We don't want our hands to look like shit, and we want to use them, especially if you're boxers yourself. You want to keep using them for another more years, and not only for the break test thing and that's it. Okay, so it's a good implement for boxes as well. As I said also in the previous video, the same goes for grip athletes, but it's not something that should be done on a weekly basis, obviously. And now I want to come to a comparison between karatekas and boxers. Now, karatekas use them quite frequently, and the reason being is because in real karate, so not in sports karate, but in real karate, there are no gloves. And because there are no gloves, they need, of course, harder knuckles and they need harder wrists. So in order for them to improve their wrist strength and the density of their knuckles, they have to have some sort of training with the boards, and not just for, let's say, a month or so in their life, but basically for the rest of their life. But the problem is, if you do it for the rest of your life, you will automatically get arthritis. And most of the master karatekas you see don't have those 4 knuckles anymore. You can see here on my fist, but only 2. So this one and this one are sort of still developed, and the other ones are sort of stick together, glued together, and you do not really see them anymore. And the reason being is because those two knuckles here become so big after time and so hard that these two here sort of are in the way, and they are basically smashed then after a while, because those two knuckles want to have more space and they push them together so that you do not really see them anymore. And that's why you see master karatekas having basically only those two giant and very hard knuckles, which are obviously necessary to break thicker and a higher amount of boards with one strike, with one punch. And that leads to the discussion of people, well, isn't then the karateka the harder puncher? And I say no. And the reason why is because we always have to think about the whole movement. Now, he has the stronger knuckles, which will give him an advantage in a street fight if he lands the punch, right? So in a street fight, nobody has gloves on. Obviously, the guy without the gloves and stronger knuckles has an advantage, whether he does karate or not. But although knowing that bones are stronger than muscles, that doesn't mean that muscles don't play a role. And the punching technique, guys, in boxing and in karate are very different. So the only advantage the karateka has in terms of punching power are his hard knuckles and his hard wrist. But he doesn't have the speed and the technique you need to deliver the harder punch. Let me show you what I mean, okay? So let's say, for example, or maybe it's not so easy to show you, but I try to. So let's say I put it here this time, okay? So the karateka typically, how does he, I'm gonna take my house shoes off. The karateka typically, how does he stand? He has a wider stance. Right? Why? Because he needs to prepare himself for kicks, and he has to prepare himself for takedowns. So the wider your stance is, the more balance you have. But also the wider your stance is, the slower you are. So, that having said, how does the punching technique looks like? When you see most of the punchers in karate, you see them, first of all, not really punching to the head, but more to the body. Because karate is about everything. It's about slapping somebody, it's about using elbows, it's about using your legs and everything. So it's not just about the fists, and boxing is all about the fists. Now, okay, let's say we have this wider stance here, okay, because you want to prepare yourself for kicks and everything. Now, how do you punch? Obviously, you twist a bit to get some punching power in there, like that. But the problem is, because your feet are planted, you do not get the real punching power in. So you do not really move in with your whole body weight. Now a boxer. Obviously there are boxers with a very narrow stance because they throw more combination punches. And there are boxers who have a sort of medium stance. And boxers who have a wider stance because they focus more on their own power punches than on combinations. So they throw less punches but with more power. And their feet are not flat-footed. So they are always in movement. And when they want to throw the killing punch, what they do is they don't stand on the same position. But what they do is they move in with their whole body weight. And they have to follow with the back leg. Why do they have to follow with the back leg? Because if they don't, obviously, they fall over. So, what you do is, you stand here, throw a jab, for example, just to feint maybe, or just to keep somebody away. And if you feel ready for the power punch, you move all in with your power and use your whole body weight. A karateka doesn't do that. He wants to stay flat-footed to be safe against anything that could come, which is not there in boxing, of course. In boxing we only have these. And punches like that. Now he has the harder knuckles, but he doesn't have the harder punch in general, because he doesn't have the speed. Why doesn't he have the speed? Because he's flat-footed. But the boxer has the speed because he's always in motion. So that's my jab, for example. That's my fastest punch, but it's not the power punch. Now my right hand. That's how you move in there. And another thing is, why can boxers do that? They can do that because they twist their back foot. And by twisting your back foot, you get into the position where you lean with your body weight in. And that's why boxers have the harder punch. That's why boxers have the hardest punch in the world, because you won't see it in any other martial art. Okay? So just to give you a quick overview on everything boards, and of course you will see me one day crush them, but I have to I have to recover as well. So see you then.